Hi, my name is Chris Parsons. I'm the Chief Executive of Mediapedia Broadcast, and I'd like to welcome you to our first ever webinar, Unlocking the Potential of the UK Broadcast Market. Mediapedia Broadcast is a broadcast operations specialist. We help clients launch and run their TV channels, and we have a range of clients from international sports channel Extreme Sports to the largest independent film channel in the UK, Talking Pictures. And last year we helped Court TV, the Scripps company, launch their channel into the UK market. So we now have a dedicated Court TV UK feed. And a couple of years ago, Smithsonian, another smaller American broadcaster, launched over into the UK. And obviously there are a range of bigger broadcasters, household names like Nat Geo and Discovery, who've been over here for a number of years. But it got us thinking about why these people had started to look at the UK. And we talked about it with our clients, and we discussed it internally. And it's obviously a logical fit. We speak the same language as the Americans, broadly speaking. And we are essentially could be considered as almost as an affiliate. Most of the American broadcasters work on an affiliate basis, picking up homes in different areas. And we've started to think about looking at the UK as an affiliate. So we wanted to put this webinar together, and Kerry Osland, who you will meet shortly, very kindly agreed to be a sort of case study for us to look at their journey coming into the UK market. And so we wanted to just educate the viewers, those of you who are overseas who may be considering an expansion into the UK, about how you get into the market, how it works, what the shape is, what you need to do. And so that's the purpose of today. So I'd like to then just make a brief introduction to my colleagues who have joined me today. First of all, we have Ed Hall, who's a long-term friend and colleague. I've worked with Ed for nearly 20 years. Ed is the managing partner of Expert Media Partners. And they are a broadcast consultancy, and they specialise particularly in EPG acquisition and getting people onto platforms. I'd also like to introduce Alan Musa, who's joining us today. Alan is an independent consultant specialising in global platform distribution, including new OTT opportunities. He's got many years' experience working with content owners and platforms, including Warner Media, Viacom, BBC Studios, and many more. We also have Mike Gull, who is the sales director for Media 15. Known Mike for over 15 years as well. And Media 15 is an ad sales agency, and they have a sister company called Media 16. Media 15 specialises in broadcast side of things, and Media 16 now looks at the OTT side of things. And I'd also like to introduce you to Andrea Wynn, who has agreed to moderate the session very kindly for us today. I've known Andrea for many years, and we've worked on a number of channel launches together. Andrea is the owner of Sunstream Media Services, a broadcast consultancy, and she has a huge amount of experience in the UK market. Okay, so that's the panel. And before we get into the main discussion, I just wanted to go through a couple of little sort of bits of almost broadcast housekeeping. The UK market, like many others, has its own specific intricacies that you would expect in any market. The one I wanted to start with is the licensing. In order to run a broadcast channel in the UK, you have to have a license which is offered and granted by the Office of Communications or Ofcom. It's a fairly straightforward process. There's a form you can download from the Ofcom website, and there are different licenses for different platforms. So you need a TLCS, a television license, content service license for Sky, DTPS for Freeview. As I said, it's a relatively straightforward process. However, the UK is very hot on compliance, and so there are elements in there that talk about your compliance processes and your systems that are in place. And it's important that those are covered off very thoroughly. And there are a number of people, including a few people on this panel, who can help you provide, guidance on that process. And it takes about 4 to 6 weeks, and it costs a couple of £1,000, and then there is for the application, and then there's a yearly fee of £1,000, which increases based on share, and that's allocated and distributed each year by Ofcom. The other a couple of bits that you need to consider are Barb. In order to carry advertising and get rewarded for your advertising, you need to know how many people are watching. And in the UK, we use the British Advertising Research Bureau, Barb. They have a panel of households that are sampled to monitor their viewing habits, and those are then scaled up across the rest of the market. And those viewing figures are sent to you as dailies and will then be sent to your advertising sales house, and that helps to drive your revenue based on the number of people who are viewing. And finally is PRS, the Performing Rights Society. The UK, as with every territory, is pretty hot on music rights. And even if a channel like Court TV, who make all of their own content in-house, and own the full buyout on all of their music, but they carry advertising, and that advertising will carry music in it that is covered by PRS. And so every channel realistically has to get a PRS license. You don't have to have it before you launch. You just need to start that dialogue with PRS. And again, there are different rates depending on, if you're a music channel, you're going to be paying more. If you're on bigger platforms, etc., the fee varies, and it's just a commercial discussion and agreement between them. And there are, again, people out there who can help. The other thing I just wanted to cover off before we get into the main meat of the discussion is the platform market in the UK. There are a range of different broadcast platforms that you can be on as a channel owner and operator. Unlike America, where it often operates in a pence per sub model, it's more of a pay-to-play model in the UK. There are some retail packages on Sky, which is the large digital satellite operator, but it's very unusual for new channels to get onto those. So what most people will do with a platform like Sky, which has about 12 million homes, is once you have your Ofcom license, which I mentioned, is you apply to Sky to get onto the platform. If you're HD, they will give you an EPG position. But if you're an SD channel, you actually need to buy an existing EPG from another broadcaster. That's relatively straightforward, and Ed, who is on the panel today, is the market leader in selling and trading of those EPGs. And what you can do is you can just get an entry-level EPG, which will put you down at the bottom of the entertainment genre, for example. Or in some cases, you can start to trade, and there's become quite a large market in trading of EPGs. So you can pay more to be higher up the EPG, and the higher up the EPG, the more eyeballs you'll get. If you think about a shopping mall, if you walk in, you might have Nike on one side and Adidas on the other, and those are the two shops that are the best sort of footfall, because they're right by the entrance, they're right at the top of the EPG, so to speak. The further down the mall you get, the less people will get down there, unless there's a specific shop that Apple that's down at the other end, and that will gather people around it. So people will trade positions to move around the EPG to get the best eyeballs. There's also Freeview. Freeview is the largest platform in the UK. It's in about 20 million of the 25 million homes in the market. And it's a digital terrestrial platform. It's an aerial on top of your house. And as the name indicates, it is free for everyone who views it. Again, you have to pay to be on it. And it is a lot more expensive than Sky, but if you look at it on a pence per home basis, you're talking about maybe 5 to 20 pence per home, depending on which of the multiplexes you're on. We also have a cable operator called Virgin, who are in about 3 million homes, and they will look at individual channels on merit, and there'll be a commercial relationship. And then there's a few other ones, such as FreeSat, which is a free-to-air satellite channel, and BT Vision and TalkTalk are some of the others. Anyway, that's enough background and enough from me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to Andrea Wynne from Sunstream Media Services, who has very kindly agreed to moderate the session today, and she's going to introduce our guest of honour, so to speak, Kerry Osland. So over to you, Andrea.
Well, I'd like to introduce Kerry Osland, who's joining us from Court TV. Kerry is the VP of Strategy and Business Development at Scripps, which of course are the owners of the Court TV channel. I think before joining Scripps, Kerry was at Tribune Broadcasting, spearheading next generation advertising initiatives. And then previously to that, I think he's held senior leadership roles at Schutz Communications, overseeing daily operations for TV, radio, print and cable, Lee Enterprises, Disney and USA Today. So welcome, Kerry. Good to have you with us. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks.
So, Kerry, I think I'm right in saying that Court TV originally launched in the USA back in 1991, and then Scripps relaunched it in 2019. And then the point of interest for us here today is that in 2020, you took the decision to come into the UK market and launch the channel in the midst of COVID in 2020. And today you're on Sky and Freeview and Freesat, I believe. So could you perhaps tell us a little bit about why Court TV decided that the UK market was of interest, and what your very first steps down this road were?
Yeah, this really started for us in November of 2019 when we went to an HBB TV symposium in Athens, Greece. And because in the US, we are switching to a new broadcast standard that is a hybrid broadcast broadband television standard, we were very interested in what was happening with hybrid television in Europe. And so our interest was in how we could get into a European market that was further along in experimentation in hybrid television than we are in the US. And the idea was to learn, earn, make some money while we're there, and then return what we learned back to the United States. So it started off with really aspirations to learn more about hybrid television in advance of our own standard changes here. But then it really piqued our interest when we started talking about the different brands that we had with different people in the space in Europe. And what we learned was of those brands that when we would tell our story, one that seemed to really pique the interest, and this was from anyone in the UK, but we had meetings with people from Italy and France and other countries too. I mean, this whole concept of courtroom television was unique. It was not something that most of the audiences are used to. A lot of people would say, so this is Judge Judy, yeah? And no, this is not Judge Judy. This is real life, real drama in courtrooms with real consequences. And so we knew that we had something pretty special over here, but we thought it might be even more of a novelty there. And so we took that hypothesis and we just started learning what we possibly could about a new market, which we absolutely had no idea how to enter the market, how to do business in the market, how to succeed in the market, how to benchmark. We had no idea what we were doing. So we just started asking questions. And the first question was, how do you make money over there? I mean, is it the exact same way? And the answer was no. But we were asking some folks, and we went to Havas Edge here in the US, who has an arm called All Response Media in the UK. And they walked us through how the business works there. And it was intriguing and interesting. And then all of the components and pieces that it takes to move a channel or launch a channel in the UK, we started slowly putting together. And then I will tell you that it was sort of linchpin partners like Mediapedia that really held our hands and then walked us through all of the steps. And there were so many times we were just saying, hey, act as if we don't know what we're doing because we don't, and explain it to us that way. So everything from licensing to ratings to how we move a signal from here to there to space to down to to simple things like how do we change a ticker so our ticker in the US is different than the ticker in the UK. All those things it demanded hand holding. And the other thing is, we have a business to run in the United States, and this is one of our networks. And the one thing we couldn't do is distract our businesses in the United States. So we did a lot of outsourcing and still do a lot of outsourcing in the UK. So the domestic operators in the United States, weren't slowed down by any of the new activities in the United Kingdom. So let me stop right there, and I can get into details. But I mean, it's been quite an adventure, and thank God for our partners it really just feels like they're just, an extension of what we do, a bureau, if you will, and they take care of all of the business for us, including some of the marketing that we do.
I think that, that's one of the reasons that we wanted to put this together, and that Kerry very kindly enjoyed to be involved, is it is such a learning experience that even just having a simple session like this, when we can just cover off some of those base points. I think if you'd had the opportunity to do that before you came over, there would have been a lot less questions that would have been asked.
But no doubt about it. Again, this was crazy because we started talking with you, Chris, just as COVID hit. As a matter of fact, we were looking forward to having a pint with you. This is about the time.
We've now got you on 3 platforms in the UK, and we've never actually shaken hands or sat over a table.
Never. And I feel like I know the UK team as well as I know the domestic team here. So, and that's the truth. It's just the way it is. But thank God we've been able to do it, and we've been able to do it by wires, and we did it with something really hard, live television, which, I mean, this is not a jukebox channel. This is live production, and so we're dropping breaks, adding breaks, we picked the hardest thing we could do, and we're doing it.
Yeah. That was one of the things that we've been talking about, the more sort of regulatory type aspects of it, securing your EPG positions and getting your TLCS license, et cetera, but perhaps what's really quite interesting to explore is some of those operational challenges where, as you say, you have a live channel, you've got that all set up for the US, so you've got that being produced with the US ad break patterns and quotas and so on and so forth, but you've then got to make that compliant for the UK, both in terms of the content and Ofcom licensing compliance point of view, and also, very importantly, the correct ad scheduling and making sure that you keep in league with all the Costa regulations. So I think Chris, MPB is managing that whole process for Court TV. So what actually operationally have you guys done with Kerry and his people over in the States to get those feeds correctly marshaled so that you can make the channel compliant in the UK?
Well, every channel has its nuances and its difficulties, and as Kerry rightly said, I mean, there's a number of Scripps products or channels that they could probably have bought over that would have been 1,000 times easier than the one that they chose to. Mike would talk about advertising in a bit more detail in a minute, but in the UK, we have very strict regulations, the Code of Standard Television Advertising, about the number of minutes an hour you can have, which aren't in line with the number of minutes you're allowed in America. Now, obviously, this is a live feed for 12 hours a day. So I think, I mean, it's 216 minutes a day, isn't it, Mike,
on average, yeah.
On average.
Yeah.
So
no, it is 216 minutes a day that you can have, so that's 9 minutes on average, but you can actually go up to 12 minutes.
So obviously what many channels will do is put those 12 minutes in their peak time, because then you're going to maximize your revenues in your peak time. But in America, I believe it's 12 minutes every hour. Isn't that right, Kerry?
I think we really have no limits for what we can do. So that was a whole new kettle of fish for us as well. But what was great is we modeled to what we could do. We came up with some interesting solutions for promos and longer sort of longer length promos to tell our story. And then what our partners there in the UK do is they do the load balancing to maximize commercial inventory during the times where we have the most audience.
Absolutely. And so you were asking Andrea about the operational side of it. So we actually, for this channel, we receive a live feed. It's actually a dedicated live feed, but it's generated in the US for the UK feed. Part of that was to do with COVID, because normally we would be running exactly the same feed. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kerry, we're running exactly the same feed, but because there were less live trials, there's now less live content. So we were filling the filling the sort of downtime when it wasn't live with historical trials. But any broadcaster coming from the US, there are various options that we had available. And when we originally spoke to Kerry, do you originate the non-live programming locally? You can bring all of that content over, standards convert from NTSC to PAL and play that out locally, or you could originate it there. So, but we take the feed comes in, we have floating breaks in it. As Kerry mentioned, it's a live feed. It has, it's a courtroom. Sometimes they don't take a break. Sometimes they move a break. Sometimes the break starts to push to the end of the hour. And one of the things that we've really had to wrap knuckles on is your last break cannot start after 57 past the previous hour. Otherwise, you're going into the next hour and you're going to breach cost of regulations. And you can probably get away with it in the first month or two as a teething thing, but they will come down on you. And this is a strict regulatory environment. But if you know those regulations and you understand how those regulations work, then you can operate quite happily within it. So each broadcaster, if there's someone watching this who's looking to come over, every broadcaster is different, and you have to pick up the nuances of each channel and work with them on that.
So I think the takeaway from that is that whether you're a live channel or whether you want to originate a channel with library content, then working with people like Mediapedia and play out partners, that whole process can be managed, and indeed a combination of the two. So we have the technology, as they say, and we can get you to air. In terms of the actual compliance of the programs themselves, has that been much of a challenge here?
I think, as I said right at the beginning, the compliance regulations in the UK are fairly strict, and as part of Kerry's or Court TV's Ofcom application, you will have to cover off compliance. Pre-recorded content, we will, if we're running a channel that has pure pre-recorded content, we will watch every second of that content and make notes on it and make cut and shut and remove things or bleep things as and when is required. Obviously, this is a live channel, so there are different aspects. It's in a courtroom, you don't know what's going to happen. I believe they run a taste and decency delay in the States, so that you've got the ability to bleep something if it goes wrong or is uncompliant. But again, you have to educate the broadcaster around the differences in the compliance for each market.
Okay, so Mike, is there anything more that you can tell us about really how the UK ad market is working and the types of stats that people can expect, and how that differs really from running a traditional US channel?
Well, I'm not an expert in the US, but there are obviously many similarities. I mean, it is basically you're selling bums on seats, eyeballs, impacts, whatever you want to call them, ratings, and the more you put out, the more you'll get.
So what about Barb? I mean, that's crucial for people here, isn't it? Explain to people about the whole Barb
I mean, the
mechanism.
market here it's a traded market. It's quite, compared to America, it's quite volatile because it all depends on station average prices. It depends heavily on the biggest channels, ITV's station average prices. And that depends on how much money is in the marketplace and how many impacts are produced by ITV. So a deal is done, for example, for most advertisers on the biggest channel, ITV, it's not done at a fixed price, it's done on the percentage of below or above the ITV price. And of course, that price needs to be relatively accurate. We know how much money is coming into their market, and we need to know exactly what the audience is. And that's where Barb comes in. I mean, Barb is a system that's been there for many years now. It's a relatively blunt tool, I should say, for what is a now a much bigger market. It was brought in when there were 4 channels going rather than 500 channels. But it is the gold standard. It's the research, British Audience Research Bureau. Its stakeholders are television companies, advertising agencies, the BBC as another television company. There is pretty much, it's the go-to. If you want to trade any business in the UK on television, most advertisers will only go to channels that have got Barb.
That's one of the things we learned, is that there's not a cost per spot market, not much of a DR or direct response market. This is all, pay for performance. And you know, it was real surprising to us from the very first day we went on the air. We had incredible advertisers that were with us. It was McDonald's and BMW and, you know, the lotteries and all sorts of things. And we're like, wow, this is great. Well, you know, it's great for them too, because they only pay for, you know, the audience we delivered, which at the beginning wasn't very much. So,
Exactly.
but it's still really nice to have those, you know, excellent brand advertisers that, you know, are part of your program for sure.
Yeah, I think that if you can get some good advertisers on, it makes your program look much more.
No doubt, no doubt.
And they come in. It's not a biggie for them to say, "Well, I'll try this," because they say if there's no ratings, then there's no money that's paid out. You can get into it much quicker, and if your ratings build quickly, then you get more money quickly. In America, I think you're thinking ahead. You're doing volume deals. You know, the year starts in October and you've got it sorted out for the whole year. We do yearly deals starting in January, but our deals are share deals rather than volume deals. So ITV will give you a better price if you're giving them a bigger share of the advertising budget than if you're rather than volume. So you can have people with lots of money on the channel getting a worse price and somebody spending less, but it's a bigger share of their budget. That's why it makes it a little bit volatile from time to time. That makes it more difficult to judge. And one of the reasons it's more difficult to judge is we've got something here which we've had for 70 years, fantastic subscription channel called the BBC.
Yeah.
And you know, in the UK guys watch about 3 hours of television a day. BBC gets an hour of those. So the commercial channels have got 2 hours. A lot of their ratings and their impacts will depend on how well the BBC did. You'll be surprised, well, I think Americans will be surprised how big some of the audiences are in the UK. You know, there are proper coverage channels. We have, ITV in this particular case, have channels that go for the week that do over 5 million adult audience, which is 10% of the population in one advertising spot. That's important. They want to get it out. However, the BBC come out with a really good program. We had one the other week, Line of Duty, the final, and that's what was watched over by 13 million people. Unfortunately, it was on a channel where there's no advertising. And some of those 13 million people obviously came from the commercial side of it. And that then affects the price and the volatility of it. So there are...
But the market, the advertising spend, you know, is around $6 billion per annum on UK TV channels. So there is a fairly substantial pot for channels to pick from.
Oh, yes. I mean, it's not too difficult to access in the short term, and there's quite a lot of money there. It's just done slightly differently. At the complications are the regulations, but you know,
but they're well known. It's a well-trodden path, isn't it? I mean, it's yes, it might sound as though things are complex, but actually it's a well-trodden path for all of us, and we know how to shepherd people through, if you like.
And navigate it.
Exactly. I think that Kerry, I think I'm right in saying that you either have or are just about to perhaps launch OTT services here in the UK with an app perhaps on Freesat, and Alan, perhaps, I don't know if you two can talk about the opportunities that OTT channels represent, either as a complementary service to a traditional linear channel, or perhaps in some cases with more niche broadcasters, even as a standalone. What are your guys' views on that?
Well, the theme for today was the potential. I think OTT is an exciting opportunity. I really do. We've talked about traditional platforms today in linear TV. I think OTT is a real exciting opportunity in the UK market for the two reasons you described. It can either be a complementary service, so it could be an SVOD app or an AVOD app to a linear channel like Core TV, or it could be launching a US channel straight into the UK market on one of these new platforms. You know, there's anachronism now, which is fast channels, which is free advertising supported television. Okay, and they are growing quickly.
And
So-
who are some of those leading platforms?
I mean,
for
in
us
the
then?
US, there's a lot more platforms, but the ones you recognize in the UK now are Plex TV or Pluto. But probably one of the biggest ones is Samsung TV Plus. You know, Samsung, a traditional TV hardware, suddenly now has become a TV platform. You know, and you have some great channels on there. Now, they are niche, they are specialist. You know, we're not talking mainstream TV, we're not talking major US studios, but we're talking good quality content that will find an audience. And it's bringing new scale. It's building on the success of the traditional platforms and bringing scale. You know, Samsung, I think Samsung TV is around about 5 million just in the UK. That's a whole new audience for a certain type of content. Now, it could be shows about guitars, it could be shows about extreme sports or healthy or well-being, or it's all very specific and very genre focused, but it is driving an audience. And I think fast channels are definitely adding to the opportunities to earn, to Kerry's point, advertising dollars in the UK market. You know, and there will be more platforms in the UK. In the US, there's loads of OTT platforms. I believe they will be launching in the UK market.
Kerry, is Court on many OTT platforms over in the States?
We're on almost all of them. I mean, we love distribution, and we seek distribution deals wherever we can find them. I did want to mention that yeah, we are about to launch a collateral app, OTT app with Freesat. Very easy for us to do because we had existing OTT apps, and using the exact same languages that everybody seems to be used to. Going through quality assurance was a breeze. So the idea is that we have the linear channel, we have the OTT channel, and then our goal is to connect those two channels via the remote control, and that to us will be a real milestone when we're able to put a call for action out on the linear channel to let folks know that there's either VOD experiences available, even things like catch up and start over. Those things are pretty unusual for the broadcast space in America. So those comfort features are things that we want to explore and understand better. But that's really, and this goes back to that 2019, meeting in Greece, where this was our original fascination, was how do we combine OTT plus broadcast and create something special for consumers. So that's going to be and Freesat, by the way, is our smallest distribution platform, and yet we're as excited about it as we have been about the Freeview experience. So there's a lot to learn and do. But the good news is we're not reinventing the wheel. I mean, using standard languages, the internet, I think we're all pretty comfortable with each other.
And Alan, what sort of opportunities does Freeview or maybe Ed offer broadcasters in terms of connected TVs? Because Freeview isn't just solely the terrestrial operator these days. That there is opportunity, and I think it's going to be growing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite exciting. I mean, Kerry mentioned catch up, but on Freeview Play for a connected set does enable you to effectively interrogate that programming and find what you want to watch in a variety of much more connected ways. And I think the reason that it's happened so fast in this market is because satellite was so cheap. Lots of channels started having what we call +1s here. Mm-hmm. So there was a huge period of 10 years where channels, because it was so cheap to have another channel, would simply have a channel with a 1 hour time delay. So you were watching the channel, you'd flick onto the channel, find that the program had already started, so you could then watch it on a channel which had a 1 hour time delay. At some point, a couple of channels even had a +2 as well, so you could have films on it. Yeah. So because the satellite capacity was so cheap and the open access to Sky meant that people knew there was demand for it. So the backwards EPG, the catching up, the looking at the program guide and being able to use that to find programs that have already been on and watch them is very popular, as is for example, on the BBC iPlayer, which is the most popular OTT service at the moment, inevitably, but when you find a program, it will ask you, do you want to start live or do you want to watch from the beginning of the program? And that's a very common technology that people are using here. So, yeah, I think these markets, this market has enabled all of our platforms to be very focused on those technologies. And Freeview, the largest one, has Freeview Play and has a new development just beginning now on, I think, just Panasonic sets at the moment, which will happen later in the year, but will enable you to link your linear EPG to an IP-delivered service. So in areas that aren't covered by that terrestrial distribution network, if you have a set and you have an EPG number, you have a channel number, you will be able to connect and watch the channel, even though it's not coming from a transmitter anywhere near you.
So in a way, Freeview is almost morphing into becoming a technology agnostic platform. You could say, combining the very old traditional dinosaur of terrestrial with
it happens
IP.
Jigsaw, but so like we've learned with everyone talked about divergence a few years ago, or convergence rather, and actually, of course, things have diverged, and people are used to going to whether it's their Apple box or their Amazon Fire box or whatever other happen box they happen to have, or their TV or the connected thing. They find content in all of those ways. So there's a jigsaw, and I think one of the things Kerry's working his way through is you just keep adding to that jigsaw. There's another app, another set that is enabled, another app that is enabled, and you build up your audience increasingly by adding to and adding to and adding to. There is no magic bullet that gets you all of those homes in one go.
No, of course.
Well, that's very much like the American affiliate market. The difference here is you can go to someone like Freeview and get most of the country, whereas in my understanding of the American market is you're doing deals on eyeballs on a regular basis.
I mean, at the risk of sounding like an OTT advocate, I think OTT it does actually provide that sort of lean back experience, of a linear-like experience of watching content. But then at the same time, in a similar fashion, if you've halfway through a program, you can then go to the on-demand section of that OTT service and watch the same program. So I just see OTT as it's a complementary way to work in the UK market alongside traditional TV. Arguably, there could be consumers. I know linear channels are still very important today. I think 70% of viewing is still to those traditional linear TV programs.
Yeah, across all the population, but there are groups.
Yeah. And there's those groups who probably would be an embracer of the SVOD services. Let's not mention them today. But then those new OTT services where they can find that content. So if I'm a fan of thrash metal, I may be, don't question that, by the way. But if I'm also a fan of health and well-being programs, I mean, again, on OTT, I see a lot of LGBTQ linear services appearing. They will find an audience, a big audience, and they will grow. And to quote Kerry again, they will earn whilst they'll be made available on OTT. So I see it as being complementary or an evolving audience alongside traditional TV platforms in the future.
So, Kerry, one of the things that you said was important for you was to learn and return. So learn from kind of what you're doing and what you're experiencing here in the UK, and then bringing that back to enhance yet more about the Court TV and indeed other Scripps brands over in the US. Is that working for you now?
Yeah, I think that we're constantly measuring what we have learned, and that's part of my dialogue inside the company. Especially, I mean, I think that last month was our first near break-even month, and that was largely because of the Chauvin trial. The Floyd case, but we've learned a lot more. But yeah, the whole idea is to, when the hybrid standard gets to an inflection point where there's enough markets that are lit up in the United States, we will already have more experience than other operators because we've been in theater working on things like the companion OTT app to Court TV, that we'll really have an understanding about what works, what does not work, and we'll deploy immediately as we gain confidence. And the stuff that doesn't work, we'll just leave it over there with you.
I think it's,
Sound right.
I think it's worth saying, because of the nature of the UK market and the advertising market, it does take time. No channel, pretty much, I can't think of any exceptions, no channel launches and it's just wildly profitable with money parties.
Shopping.
Well, potentially TV shopping, yes, but on day one. And there is a lag in the advertising as well. So you've got this 5-month advertising cycle, if I'm right, Mike. So on month 1, you're selling month 3 when you don't get your revenue until month 5. So if you're growing, you're always slightly behind that curve until you start to plateau out. But many channels do launch and make themselves very profitable. We launched a channel. Our first client is Talking Pictures TV, which is a classic film channel. I've seen over 20 years in this industry a lot of channels sort of come up and people with ideas, and this one looked like it potentially could work, and they've grown to the largest independent channel in the UK, and they're very profitable. They're on all the platforms and they're doing really well. So if you've got the rights and you've got the content, the opportunities are there for people, but there is obviously a period where you're going to have to pay to get through to that period, just because of the nature of the market. But the opportunities are there for channels that promote themselves, market themselves. We help Court TV with UK social media. If you are active on social media, you can't. I mean, Dominic Mattison, Mike's business partner, you used to say you can't just put a channel up. It's not the field of dreams. You have to promote it. You have to tell people it's there. You have to give people the opportunity to find it, and a lot of that is to do with social media. Especially in this day and age, but channels are launching and channels are making money in this market and doing very well.
Well, we modeled out, a best case, worst case, and probable case scenario, and then we and what we would be happy with, and then we found out what these other channels where they were compared to each one of those scenarios we had, and we really have a clear understanding that if we look like PBS America and the Smithsonian Channel, that will be a wild success story. If we look like the Travel Channel, that will be a probable case scenario. And I'm not going to mention the couple channels that we don't want to look like, but
I'll go on.
But we know their names.
But it's interesting that you say that, because you can model that, because Barbies are publicly available figures, and because the ratings are sold in such a way. I did some work a number of years ago for a film company who were potentially looking at launching their own linear channels, and I was able to look at all of the other competitive film channels and say, this is the kind of ratings they're doing. Based on these ratings, I can forecast that they're making roughly this amount of money. So it is interesting, if someone is coming into the market, you can do that research in advance and say, if you perform like these guys we won't mention, then you're going to be here. If you perform like these, it is a fairly open market
You'd know within 5% of what they're actually doing.
Yes.
Okay, what you can say?
Yeah, and those that come into market, they're going to select a sales house to work with. We would call it a rep firm over here, but sales house over there. And that sales house will want your business, and they will want to help you with modeling, just like Chris mentioned.
This open access thing is what's so important, and there are so many examples of companies or channels which are either coming from the stables of big successful broadcast networks, or one-off or creative ideas coming with venture capital or other funding that do succeed. There are other ways, because the platforms are open and because you can launch here. If you have the budget and you have the will and you have the creativity and you have the content, you can get the channels onto the right platforms, you can get seen, and you can turn that into money. That is a really big plus about this market.
Absolutely.
So a couple of questions I have in my mind. So we've spoken quite a lot about the UK. What happens nowadays post-Brexit if a broadcaster wants to be in the UK but also wants to be in other European territories? Any European territory, for instance, and Ireland, of course, is now separate from here.
So satellite,
so kind of exactly technically easy, but from a and also sort of two parts to that question really. One is the licensing situation, because that's changed radically since Brexit, but also in terms of rights, you're going to need to make sure that your rights are all in order for different and multiple territories, and perhaps think about localization as well. So Ed
I mean,
first.
Brexit, yeah, it's taken up a lot of our time over the last couple of years, and I think we've moved about, or we've helped at least 30 channels find a post-Brexit setup that works for them. And the end result of the complexity of the change is actually pretty simple, which is that the UK is one market and the rest of the EU is another. If you are in either of those markets, you need to be licensed. So the whole of the EU is a market which requires licensing, and the whole of the UK is a market that requires licensing. So if you have a channel that is visible in both, whether it's the same channel or whether it's localized for those markets, you need to be licensed in the whole of the EU. You only need one license for the EU, and you need one license for the UK. And there are now some pretty straightforward ways of achieving that. So that isn't the complex obstacle that it was a couple of years ago that took a lot more work. So there are ways to resolve that. The complexity, which I think Chris just alluded to, is that if you are only targeting the UK and you are on Sky, then that satellite naturally also gives you the Republic of Ireland, which is in the EU. So you either have to block that signal, which has a cost, or you need to be licensed in both of those jurisdictions. And it's not as complex as it looked as though it was going to be. There are some pretty straightforward solutions to the problem. But the one bit that you just touched on at the end there, which is still an emerging issue, is the distinction between the rights in those markets. And actually the EU has new rights laws that are coming into effect in its jurisdictions at the moment. So, I think the thing that Chris said right at the beginning about you need to be rights ready. And actually the post-Brexit environment makes that just as important, if not more important. So you need to start back and think about your rights, your use of music, your use of performances. Where are those? And are you appropriately licensed in those jurisdictions? So, before you get onto platforms, before you get onto EPGs, before you get onto the commercials, you need to start back, look at your box of content and work out, are you rights ready for those markets? And there are lots of people here that can help you with that. There's 5 of them sitting around.
But also that reflects into Alan's speciality as well, because not everyone buys the rights for all platforms. I mean, it's becoming more common that you buy national, but it might be, is it easier to get rights for OTT than it is for broadcast? Are there, how do you?
Yeah, I mean, to a degree it is. I mean, the OTT space is arguably unregulated in the UK, so therefore there's no requirement to have a knock-on license.
Yep.
So because
at the moment,
because it's more of a programmatic sell, advertising sell, there's no requirement for BARB as such. It's two-way data, therefore you could argue it's more accurate than BARB, but then again, it's tradable in the same way. The prices are higher, but maybe it's more targeted. So yeah, there are not barriers as such, but it's also there's a smoother transition into the OTT space. But I think a key point is the word budget was mentioned in terms of it's the ambitions of the clients in the US. If there's a client in the US, they've got great content, a great brand, and has got a war chest and really wants to go into the market and be really successful, then it is about Freeview and Sky and so forth, because the advertising price, can be much bigger. If it's a niche brand which has limited resources but wants to come into a dynamic market like the UK, then OTT might be the first phase, because the entry level or the entry cost, if you like, is not as high as more traditional TV. The audience isn't as big right now, but in 10 years' time, it could be. So it depends on the ambitions. If there's a great client in the US with a strong brand, great content, depending on where their ambitions lie, the UK is open for new services.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, you mentioned Ireland just now. With that footprint, you need those licenses, as you said before, because you then have to market it. And of course, they have their own BARB. They have a different BARB. The UK BARB, to get started off in that, is probably £50,000-60,000 an annum. Yeah. So that's the sort of figure that you've got there. The Irish price is, I think, a little higher. I'll be willing to be credited that, but because it's serving only 3.5 million people instead of 65 million people. So there are different costs as you come in there, but Irish TV is per thousand more expensive. So there are ups and downs.
Okay, so I think we've probably answered one of the main questions. Is it easy to launch a channel in the UK? And
you take a vote.
Yes, it sounds like it's complex, but actually it's a well-trodden path, and there are many people like us who can navigate the way through and steer people through. I mean, Kerry, what's your big takeaway for how traumatic a journey was it for you guys to launch here, setting COVID aside, of course?
I burned like 2.5 months before I found, Chris. So that was dramatic. and then no, when you find someone that you can trust and will hold your hand through the process, then it's not traumatic at all. As a matter of fact, most of the business is taken care of for you, and you can focus on what you need to focus on, and that is delivering the best content you possibly can, the best marketing and promotion that you possibly can. And that's what we want to do, and that's what we do best. So it's at first it was a black box. There is no doubt about it. It was a big giant mystery, and then and now it just seems like regular business.
Well, it's very, very kind of you to say that, Kerry. I mean, my view on it is every market is different. I've launched TV channels in Australia and relaunched a channel with Ed in Greece a few years ago, and I've launched a channel in the Ukraine. Every market is different. They're all complicated, but they're just complicated in different ways. So I wouldn't really know that much about how to go about launching a channel in the US and about the affiliate deals. I was saying earlier on in my introduction that I almost want American broadcasters or foreign broadcasters to look at the UK as another affiliate. Why it makes it less scary than an international launch. And wherever you go, you're going to need those people on the ground. And that might be Andrea or Alan or Mike, Ed or myself. There are other people out there. But it's about understanding that today's a small part about trying to give people a bit of more of an understanding, just a base level of an understanding in the UK. And anyone can feel free to get in touch with any of us and ask more questions.
You reminded me. I mean, I often laugh, and I know we've certainly had that conversation with several of you. It's a relatively small market. It's got a market with commercial value. It's an exciting market. It's a premium market in many ways, but it's quite a small market. And that means that the advisors and the people that Kerry talks to are a relatively small family of people. We all know each other. We've all been working together.
They do.
And we always find it quite amusing when outsiders to the market will sort of individually contact different members of the broadcast community in the UK and try and sort of play us off against one another, and we'll all end up in a pub somewhere after an event. So, oh, have you spoken to Court TV yet? Oh yeah, and it works its way around. And I think what Kerry said is very important: is find yourself one of this family of advisors, not just the five of us here. There are a few others, but find someone that you're comfortable with and use that as your way into the market, because we're not big enough to play all the advisors off against each other. And all it means is we just start chatting and giggling amongst ourselves.
Absolutely.
So I think that we have some questions that have come in from our audience that we can discuss and hopefully provide the answers to.
Are OTT services regulated by Ofcom in the same way that broadcast TV is? No, not yet. Is the simple answer. It's the main platforms who are regulated because they have an EPG. So right now they're not, but obviously as that audience grows, as the platform grows, then I imagine Ofcom from a compliance point of view and also from a regulatory point of view will want to have some sort of level of control.
You can get an OTT license from Ofcom, can't you? They do offer a
VOD.
They offer
a VOD
yes,
license. They offer a VOD license.
Yes, exactly. I think arguably, with the big SVODs coming into the market, they want to make sure they're being regulated.
Okay.
So yes.
Streaming providers and OTT providers are increasingly coming under the ambit of the regulators. Interestingly, the EU has got new regulations. They are coming in gradually, country by country, but the country that's adopted them first seems to be the UK, which is no longer in the EU. Slightly odd,
but I think it's fair to say, isn't it, that yes, obviously, Ofcom is important and other similar licensing regimes, but by and large, once you understand what those licensing requirements are, they're really not too onerous, and they're not a barrier to operating a TV channel that can earn decent revenues at all. So it's a necessary it's not even an evil. It's just a necessary thing
Yeah.
that's
I think
perfectly
that's a really good point.
perfectly possible to comply with without prejudicing your
Discover what your
ability to.
compliance requirements are before you breach them.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, avoid the fine. We don't want any of those. We've all
It's a
been there.
reasonable price of entry, should we say?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
to a degree. You're
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
So do we think that we're thankfully, hopefully coming out of COVID now here, pubs are open and restaurants open indoors from next week, indeed,
Yeah.
hooray. But has it had a big effect on the advertising market? And do we see that changing now?
It did, certainly in the UK. It probably had a bigger effect than it did in the USA because of the share of advertising budget. British advertisers could just cut their budgets completely and they'd still be adhering to the agreements they've made with the television companies. The American market, based on volume, of course, although they guarantee a volume possibly with step backs, they could go to their lower step back, but it's still much bigger than the 50% drop that we were seeing here in Q2.
Wow.
Yeah, the whole sections of the market,
Yeah.
there were no longer any adverts for cruise channels,
Yeah.
cruising people. There were no,
Yeah.
all of the restaurants closed. So McDonald's stopped out, the whole sections of the marketplace just dropped off.
So big ITV, Channel 4, all of the market was 50% down. It's been gradually recovering. Q3, end of Q3 starting, Q4 quite good, first quarter this year quite good. The year would probably end up from last year at about 12% down across TV spend.
2020.
Yeah,
Okay.
2020. Yeah, that'd be about
Considering there was a
12.
50% drop,
Mm.
that's
Yeah,
not a bad final
that's
position to end
fantastic.
up in.
Real quickly, I mean, we launched Court TV at the beginning of COVID when advertising was dropping and there was no court in session. That's how crazy we are.
Yeah.
You
I
got the
think-
double whammy.
The last time in 2008, it took about 16 months after that, the financial crisis, for the market to get back to where it was 16 months before.
So we're pretty much coming to the end of it, hopefully.
Yeah. I think I
Um,
saw
I-
a quote from ITV saying that they were cautiously optimistic about, about their things.
Yeah. But there were very big drops. There were lots of money that disappeared. The average cost of spots and advertising in cost per thousand terms, on ITV in 2019 it was £8. Last year it was £4. So, and
But
then that
we're
bumps
coming
onto
out of it
everybody
now.
else as well.
The good news is we're coming out of it.
Yeah, it's
so
coming back. Yeah.
I'm
So
seeing
that's good.
vacation advertising on television, so it must be coming back.
yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's coming back. And
So-
of course, the government spent money on the market. Actually dropped for consumer goods more than that. But the government came in with their COVID advice and instructions and all that sort of thing. We got smaller in America. I think they decided that they had to buy for the advertising, so they just changed their creative and made the creative fit in with what goods they had, because they had to spend the money in it anyway.
So we've spoken quite a lot then about the advertising models for channels, but let us not forget that isn't the only game in town, and depending on the type of content, the type of audience that you're trying to reach, then there are opportunities to run subscription channels as well. And so thinking about the totality of it all, whether it's advertising funded, whether it's sub-funded, what's the general consensus on the ability to launch money-earning linear channels here in the UK?
I think everything comes down to content, as it always does with television.
Content
If you've
is
got good
king, huh?
content. Content is king. If you've got good content, there are opportunities. The cost of running a Sky channel, the cost of capacity has dropped. Satellite capacity has dropped by 40% in the last number of years. So you can get your channel up if you've got good content. You can market it well. You have a good social media presence. I still think there's a home for linear TV channels in the UK. That said, I also think there's a home for OTT channels, and as we went into some detail earlier, it depends on what your content offering is. Are you going to launch a national DTT channel on Freeview that's just about guitars? Probably not, but you might launch that on onto an OTT platform. Something like Court TV is big enough and has fantastic production values that actually launching it onto a national platform is exactly the right thing to do to get it to the right number of eyeballs. It's also something Kerry alluded to earlier, we just don't have in the UK. It's completely anathema to us to be able to see the inside of a courtroom. So if you've got good content, then the market is there, the advertisers are there, the platforms are relatively straightforward to get onto, especially if someone's holding your hand, and you can still make money in it. It isn't going to be on day one, but you can build really solid brands, as Talking Pictures have done, as Smithsonian have done, as Court TV are starting to do. You can really build these brands if you do it right, and you've got, but it's always going to be about the content.
I'll always come back on that. If I come back on that, back to the sort of metric I love to keep quoting, but is the cost per home. You know, and if you have content which is wildly popular, or could be wildly popular, or is live, then if you want to get that into as many homes as possible, there is no cheaper method of doing it than broadcast television. You know, you get the most homes for the lowest amount of money, 24/7. 365 days a year. You work out the cost of getting that content into the home. There's nothing on the internet or IP delivered that comes close. So you need to have, I think, both still at this time to make those big experiences work. You can look at niche opportunities for sure, but if you've got a powerful linear proposition and you're using that to support OTT, VOD, SVOD properties, then you have, I think, at the moment, that magic combination, because there's one world where you can get higher revenues for related content that you'll get in the OTT or related spaces. But in your linear market, you've still got the bulk of the ad spend going into that space, and you've got the biggest number of eyeballs for the lowest price. So I'm still a big advocate of the linear experience.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I think.
No, I think we were chatting before. The analogy is, you know, if you're a big, massive sporting franchise like the NBA or NFL or the Premier League, for example, then eyeballs, you know, big popular programs, as it were. And then the linear space absolutely should be the place where you should launch, because you'll get the audience, you'll get the advertising or subscription revenues. If you're high skill soccer, or if you're a sport which is more of a niche market, then maybe the OTT space is the place to start off as well. I completely agree. So yeah, I'm still an advocate of linear TV, but OTT is coming through as well.
Well, whichever way you go, we can sell it for you.
Exactly.
I think on that note, it's probably time to draw things to a close. So my thanks, and from our audience as well, to Mediapedia for putting together this whole event and bringing us all together. And thanks to Kerry for joining us over in the States, and Ed and Mike and Alan. And I guess that's it. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much indeed.